colleagues, for a unique opportunity to start on time and probably to finish our session on time. My name is Stolerov, I'm managing partner of Sputnik. I'm going to discuss redevelopment of ZIL territory. On the panel we have Grigoryan, head of Meganon Bureau, the person who has been in this project quite some time, Mr. Kuznetsov, chief architect of Moscow, Mr. Molchanov, General Director of LSR Group, the company which in practice implements and develops this project, and Hani Rashid, founder of Asymptom, a person who designs and implements the construction part of one of the major landmarks on this territory. We're talking about a unique project, largely unique project, not only because it may be one of the largest territories, not only in Europe, but in the world, of post-industrial municipal redevelopment. Effectively, we're talking about 300 hectares of post-industrial developments. It's a peninsula, maybe 6-7 kilometers away from Moscow, from Kremlin. The project which is directly linked to the mega project agenda discussed today. This project will require investments to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. It will impact spatial development of Moscow, but this project is unique not only with its size. It is also unique because it was one of the first projects where Moscow as a city 6 years ago announced its vision and its will to develop its territory. The project was one of the first to go through an international tender for general planning, for master planning, and the city determined the principles of development. These principles were included into all planning projects, and the developer received a certain vision of the city as to how this territory should develop. And then nearly 6 years after the start of this project, we may do a certain checkup to see what is the status of the project. We see that it evolves very actively, that the real estate is developed and it is being sold. And some of the experts who are directly involved in this process will discuss it today. The first floor is to Yuri Grigoryan, who may be the person who has the longest relations with this project. Thank you. Could you put my presentation on the screen?
For us, this project started somewhat earlier than we had been invited to that tender. And we, with my students, had a project of green water. That's industrial territory from Bitsa to the Losiny Ostrov. They were supposed to be the one ecological park installed, and two waters, the blue one and the green one, had to be intertwined at the ZIL area, and that is how we were invited to that tender. And the key idea of this students' concept was really to put these rivers together, and it has become a viable project. And the role of our moderator was really significant for that first tender. And you see here the red spot, that is a part of the system where two rivers meet together. And also we have the railroad and the circular shape of a park, and that is a real essential place. And then we had the research on the ecology of periphery, and ZIL stays right on the borderline of the center and periphery. And that was how this super park started its development. And that was a very essential concept for the entire body of the city. And getting back to the territory, we see the status of this territory with the master plan. And this is the plant, the facade, the boulevard, and we see two networks here on parallel to the old part and to the new part. And also you see some separation between the quarters. And that's what we have inherited. That is the facade of Zil. The front place, that is the monument, the boulevard, and we are retaining jointly with Le Serb company. And this packaging gives us an understanding of the scale. And Zil fits into the Gorky Park, New Arbat, Olympic part, and the Gold Island, that is of Ostozhenka. And that is exactly the urban area which has to have all these installations and events. And that was how the plant looked like back in 2012. And this map shows all kinds of pollution and contamination, and so the construction forms and are polluted, and the land is contaminated. And we see here the ground part, boulevard retained by Loser company. And Andrei Yurievich will tell us about it, about the legal regulatory framework better. But these lands are not preserved. And that is the concept of Zil art, having constructivism elements, and we could have retained more there, but it was impossible to do so, to retain all these artifacts in the center of the city. Nevertheless, this is a real significant part of the cultural legacy. Here we see some transportation schemes to be put onto that area. We have quite a number of bridges, also highways, and that was a part of our tender plan. And the idea behind was to retain part of the production side. It will be organized as a performance, and it could be turned into the museum of Zil. And the public space is supposed to have a large park connected with the embankment of the Moscow River. That was the pilot project, and the embankment reaches 12 kilometers from both sides of the enterprise. And as well, it's worthy to mention the pedestrians-only bridge over the Moscow River. And this is the northern part of the project, the larger park, which we've managed to retain, and we may cross this green zone by the car and by the train. And this is the project for the housing construction, and the density is concentrated in the boulevards, and therefore the services will be centered here, and thus it will become the urban attraction. And there are quite a number of designs reviewed. We have the Key Tower. Here as a project, we have some cultural facilities Andrei Yurievich is going to tell us, and we have various types of heights, and also the wind strip, or closed and open quarters, and system of elevations, and inside we have 6-7 storied city, and with a very high density. And alongside this, we're also supposed to have 12 or 13 story the building. That was the concept which we've designed with Oliser. We have some insulation limitation, the transparency of the ground floors. Also, we have pedestrians only streets, and the children may go along the pavement via the park to school and kindergarten. We also have the theory of intersections with micro gardens, and that is the micro scale of the public space with all the materials selected. We also have the brick production in St. Petersburg, from St. Petersburg, and that is the first series of bricks, which was designed by the first team of architects. And then Alexander Brodsky, well-known artist, was the author of that bricks collection, and they are visiting the plant to just discuss this color palette of bricks, and actually they will select this clinker bricks of some kind of orange shade. And so that is a preliminary view, but the houses will look different. And this picture shows how many architects will be involved in the project. And it will be a curator's project. And after that Congress, we're supposed to have 18 companies to get together in our office to discuss this project. And we are going to discuss only 8 quarters, which will be comfortable for the developers, and it will be the sole parking lot, 1 parking lot and 1 architect, and the company is going to experiment. Otherwise, it will be hard for the architects to deal with that project. After we launch the 4th ring, and that is how the people may get an access to this boulevard, and this is the key square at the very start of this boulevard. We see the retained facades. They will be fully restored. It is just the urban decoration. It would be much better to retain workshops, but we think that this urban interior has to be preserved. It is much better than to ruin everything. I'm absolutely convinced on that. So the southern part is being redeveloped. We see the pedestrians-only bridge to connect 2 boulevards, and 2 new streets will be set up, and it's 1.4 kilometers, the new boulevard, the green boulevard, with all kinds of stores, which is very essential for the urban development. And hereby we see the key buildings, towers, that's the Zeal planet, and so they have some kind of arrows to show the direction, and that is the old bed of Moskva River bridge, and then this is a bridge which gives an access to the new ring road of the railroad company. And this is one of the key seaports here, and the park and that loop of the river, and then the embankment will make a very picturesque landscape, and that is the entire status of the project, which we were supposed to show. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yuri, for your very interesting presentation. And thank you for not exceeding the time limit. And we've been discussing your project for 15 minutes. Your next question will be addressed to you, Sergei Kuznetsov. And how are you going to put forth the urban vision as to this or that territory development? And how do you conjugate it with the visions of the investors? And how to implement that particular vision, and what is the international and national expertise. Sometimes it is a painstaking issue, and what do we really have we managed to achieve as to the key components of your urban vision, and how to retain certain visions and how to preserve it? What is the compromise with the investors? What is your interconnection with the investors? But, well, it's kind of a lengthy question, but I will try to answer briefly. Let me just get back to the expertise. And you probably know that the quality of planning in practical terms was kind of a strange one, relying on the concept of this bedroom residential areas,
and to talk about contacts with investor was not possible practically, because normally people made plans which totally away from life. Some things were amended, some things were improved, but at the end of the day there were some hybrid plans which could not be implemented. There were some fragmented ideas, etc. In reality, one of the most challenging questions was how to approximate the vision of the city and the vision of the investor, and generally the idea of comfortable environment, to link comfortable environment to actual life and to convert it from talks to reality. ZIL project for us became one of the first projects, and maybe the first project in urban planning of Moscow, revolutionary in all its aspects. The first thing that we did when we started back in autumn 2012, we've given up everything that has been done by the General Plan Institution, and I propose that Grigoryan return to project, because the results of the tender were thrown away and were not of interest to anyone. The first thing we did was to put together, in line with the principles of the city priorities and public space. At this stage, we clearly understood that the city which is comfortable and convenient will be, let's say, better understood by an investor than some abstraction that was produced before. We made a step forward again. We studied experience in advance, and we are moving in interactive manner. We should find a compromise with an investor, which is pretty difficult. Well, I'm for iterations. We issue some work, which, based on our experience, is a product on which we can rely and start work. And then we clarify some points in the process of work with investors. Now, in case we necessity, we reissue all planning drafts. We broke these documents into several parts, and in cooperation with investors, we reissue those documents. However, the basic principles are retained. For a person who is not a specialist, the original and the new project will look the same. A specialist will identify some modifications. I'm a proponent of project type work. As much as possible to explore all the details at the earliest stage. We're talking about a more flexible approach at the city level, and we're now talking about much more detailed work on minor things at the planning stage. This is what I wanted to say at this stage, and ZIL project is a good example, showing that it may be a costly approach, but in terms of efficiency of investment, it's much better. The city already has invested about 40 billion into the infrastructure of ZIL, roads, railroads, etc. Thank you. I've been following this project for about 6 years from a side, and I have an impression that some superior forces are protecting and safekeeping this project, when it seemed to us, me and Yuri, that very few things of the original vision will be implemented. Sergei Kuznetsov appeared as the chief architect, and then Yuri Grigoryan had all grounds to continue working on this project as the supervisor, thanks to LSR Group for that. And we're under impression that everything will turn out okay. If we turn to investment, I'm pass floor to Andrei Molchanov. Andrei, I would like to ask a question. If we look at development realities, I remember from the tender documents of many teams that were hired back in 2012, one of the major differences in their vision was the scale of investment and the timing for implementation. Russian teams largely said that it will be maybe 10 to 15 years, 15 to 20 billion US dollars. And the most conservative assessment from British and German was that the project will continue for about 40 years at least. Major differences in assessing the timing and the pace of development, while points to certain traditions. In terms of implementation timing and cost, on what you rely in your plan, how you produced your financial model. Thank you for a question. It balances very nicely our financial model. I say that a mega project, there are many definitions of what is a mega project, but definitely there are some key things. At 1 billion US dollars as minimum investment, and at least 5 years from the start of the project and commission of the project, and impact on life of at least 1 million people. If lives of 1 million people is changed, then it impacts, then it is a mega project. And when one talks about implementation of project, you achieve a synergy effect where all stakeholders are satisfied. That is, municipal authorities who receive a new point of growth and a new attraction point, additional taxes, additional investment, etc. Well, all construction investment expands the tax base of the city. Another stakeholder are the citizens, the buyers, who receive a radically new project. We have not had such a project in Moscow before. And the third stakeholder, investor and our shareholder, public company, can earn more money, however they invest more. A mega project allows us to implement non-profit projects like a museum. We're building a Hermitage Moscow museum. It is not a small-size building. I have greatest respect for Khali Rashid. It's a full-fledged museum, 13,000 square meters, modern art museum, which will be managed by the Hermitage Museum. There have been many works of art from the sellers of the Hermitage demonstrated there. They will hire also, though they rent works of art from other countries. It's a unique object. The building is a work of art in itself, of modern art. There will be lecture halls, master classes for school children. We have several elements of attraction. The cultural element is that Hermitage Museum. Then there will be a drama theater, also a non-profit project. a puppet theater for children, and a concert hall. These are key things which will be on a pedestrian route, and that pedestrian boulevard will be a work in art in itself. At the start of the boulevard, there will be a fountain, and we have summer in Moscow, by the way, and children will be able to run in the fountain while their parents will sit on the benches around and drink coffee. And it will be 1,200 meters of a strolling area. We invited a Dutch company, Redijk, which produced excellent objects here, and we turned this boulevard into something modern for young children, Singapore, Tokyo. And that's Jeremy Ake, leading landscape architect working in Los Angeles and London and Barcelona. He was very interested. We met him, and he is developing this park. The first part of the park is 14 hectares. The second part of the park, another 10 hectares. All in all, 24 hectares. Then 8 hectares along the embankment. The embankment is a unique part of the city. Creation of embankment along the entire length of the Moscow River. It's 4 kilometers. The minimum width will be 90 meters, and the center of embankment will be 200 meters. Those 4 kilometers will be a jogging track there. The track will be 8 kilometers long. You will be able to do jogging in the morning. We thought all about that, and it is possible as part of this mega project. The quality of life of Moscow people will be raised to a new level. More or less the housing problem, the residential problem is more or less resolved. And buyers of the future looking not only for a top-notch apartment, but they're looking for a top-notch living environment. In our educational center, we create 4 schools, and all the first centers will be located on, or will sit on 5 hectares. There will be a huge school there, a kindergarten, a football stadium, and place for other activities. We're able, we want to achieve a situation where most of the children will be able to reach their school or kindergarten without crossing any motorway. We are now working on that with our colleagues. On the one hand, we invest plenty of money in those non-profit things, but on the other hand, I am deeply convinced that our future buyers will approve of that. People will be ready to pay premium for each square meter of floor space in order to obtain a secure and comfortable environment. There will be a puppet theater, and there will be internet translation from this puppet theater in each apartment. Excellent conditions for enjoying music or sports. We're going to have 17 restaurants, pharmacy, etc. And in terms of logistics, in terms of movement, it will be very convenient for people. Clearly, in 10 years' time, we'll be ordering everything via internet, but it will happen much faster because some premises which are part of the project will allow that. The economics is such that original huge investment will create a product which has never been here before and will be appreciated by all the residents. Thank you, Andrew. I would like to thank for your answer to quite a totally different question. We'll believe that we're satisfied. We're at an urban forum, and urban community continues to discuss about the question about the scale of preservation of the ZIL legacy. As an investor, maybe Kuznetsov will comment on it. Did you have any discussion with the city about the scale of this preservation, or the expert urban discussion was held separately, and for interaction between the city and the investor it was not a relevant factor? I will try to answer that. From the very start we discussed with the city, and we are for preserving constructivism. Constructivism is the part of architecture that was a trigger for the career of many top architects in the world. Vesnyany, well, are top architects. Tatlin, Alentulov, well, these are persons, well, who were landmark figures in architecture and painting. Tatlin, Rodchenko, etc., and other artists. And preserving this legacy, that lot number 8, which is in the boulevard, we're maintaining the face of the former shop. And well, when the boulevard of the width of 60 meters and 90 meters and the length of 1,200 meters, well, will allow us to preserve the elements of style. That legacy will allow well, future generations to know what our ancestors did back in the 30s of the 20th century. I will add a few words. Yes, the memory of space and perception of the city as a multi-layered substance, well, doesn't mean only preservation of that, of the substance. For us, it was very important to demonstrate the succession factor, so that people who visit ZIL and who live there will feel that their history is still there. The preservation of names, elements of architecture will make a link between the past and the future. The plan of this territory is a part of its history and culture. We especially looked at the history of the place and how it should be reflected in the new project. It was a considerable part of the whole exercise. And Hani Rashid, well, as a desert, with his project of the museum landmark, it's common knowledge that Moscow becomes quite a prominent city in the global market of museum projects of different sizes. On the other hand, modern art museum in Gorky Park. On the other hand, mega project Polytech, which was implemented through an international tender with involving a variety of international experts. And the Hermitage project in Zilart. Hani, could you tell us a few words about that project?
Absolutely, and my Russian is not so good, so it's in English. I'm going to show you the two projects that we're working on. You know, it's a rare occurrence in the world when you have a perfect storm that comes where things come together so precisely that the kind of outcome is magical. Here, and I have to say, Andrei is an enlightened, highly sophisticated client to work with, which is extraordinary and rare sometimes on this planet. The master plan is a phenomenally smart and intelligent master plan. The place ZIL has a kind of magic and power and spirit about it that is completely unique, with its constructivist history and its many, many generations of people who lived and worked there, producing things, machines. And then Moscow. Moscow is a phenomenally deep place, a place of deep history, of remarkable, a kind of magical place. And I think those four things allowed us to work on two very interesting and inspired projects on the 4LSR and on the site. The first one is the ZIL Tower, the Gateway Tower. Constructivism has been, as I think Andrei said, as both Andrei and Sergei said, is a key ingredient in the history of art and architecture way beyond Russia. It influenced many, many important architects, many of the so-called star architects, and many others, not only because of the power of the forms, but also the power and the spirit of the ideas. So in a way, this is a kind of inspiration to work in a place where constructivism was alive and well and dreamed of a fantastic future. For us, the whole history of this period of architecture, which is alive and well and in the DNA and almost everything that takes place here, was a kind of inspiration and a driver for these two projects. The idea was to produce a kind of musical accompaniment to a fantastic history and place. The existing architecture, the renovation of it, the restoration of it is part of that story. And then when we start to look at the master plan that Yuri had developed on this part of the project, the idea of a cultural boulevard as a public place, as a place where people gather, where the spirit of the city is celebrated from a public realm point of view, not necessarily from a retail or developer-driven point of view, is a fantastic and powerful urban statement. And to drive that, you need icons, you need interesting theaters and events. A museum is a key component to driving an urbanism, a sort of powerful urbanism. The existing place was really in complete disrepair, as you all know. But for me, a kind of inspiration, a powerful inspiration in this amazing scale, the amazing quality of texture, of beauty in the existing leftover buildings from the ZIL factory. To start the tower project and to develop an iconic tower in Moscow and on this site, I had to draw on the spirit I watched Vertov's Men with a movie camera quite a few times to try and understand the power and beauty and poetry of the machine age in Russia in the early 20th century, and how that translated into these remarkable drawings and so on. The site, as we saw it in the beginning, after the master plan with some early ideation, early drawings, presented a kind of interesting hybrid between contemporary building and the remaining, whatever could be restored and remaining from the constructivist period. And so our project became, on Andrei's invitation, to begin to develop this symphonic work. We're one of many architects, very, very talented architects, particularly talented architects. Most of them are Russian and a few of us are foreign. And for us, really, it was a matter of putting in these key, beautiful moments to catalyze, to instigate, to make the whole place begin to sort of work around ideas, not from the past in a nostalgic sense, but to look forward into the future and produce a 21st century urbanism in a 21st century place. Our early studies in the office were a kind of joy and a pleasure to work with. We were working with sort of large, robust forms and tectonics, using the sort of history of constructivism, but asking ourselves, what would the constructivists have liked to see and do in today's world and in today's landscape? So not a Disneyland approach, but rather something totally fresh and new. The earliest studies of the project were really a kind of division of residential space, a special kind of residential component up in the tower, a kind of muscular robustness, a sort of powerful statement. This is the icon tower, this is the statement tower on the site that draws a lot of attention and can be seen from Red Square effectively, so our building. So the idea was to do something quite special. As we work through the process, we have this beautiful drawing in mind and this idea of this kind of metaphysics of carrying the cube into the sky. Something the constructivists dreamed of. Tatlin dreamed of it with the tower. Melnikov dreamed of it. Rodchenko dreamed of it. Lissitzky dreamed of it. It's a powerful tectonic dream that we needed to somehow find manifest. So we built many studies trying to understand and explore, how do you do this? How do you create in contemporary culture and contemporary technology with a contemporary and an enlightened contemporary client a sort of working, viable building? Because at the end of the day, it's not a work of art. It's a building that has to function. People live in it. They will love it. They will use it. Hopefully they will love it and adore it. And so this became the sort of studies. We introduced the fluting as a musical system that would call back somehow in the memory the ideas of the machines, the tools, the beautiful poetic ideas of what these factories were like as a kind of place of people's lives. And there were many, again, generations of people who lived and worked here. So the memory of ZIL was really key to the making and the designing of this tower, that it's a kind of a mnemonic device to recall not just constructivism, but the whole early 20th century powerful machine that Moscow had in this site. As we worked through the studies, we introduced the tectonic became more and more 21st century as a kind of notation system. So you can see the cube, the smaller cube, has a kind of interesting musical notation. We've working very hard with LSR on the glass types, the metal types, and the way that we will get this kind of musicality into the skyline. The building, it's interesting to be a foreign architect working here, because what we bring, I think, is a kind of our eyes and ears. Not so much, my idea is never to import from another place an idea and put it here. My idea is to read the place from a very special point of view and try and unearth what's unique about this site and this city. So we really thought about the fact that towers here need to have a kind of life in the sky. It's not always sunny here, and so somehow this building has to always be kind of striking and beautiful and optical. So this is the detailing studies of the cladding and the glass. We're using a couple of different glass types, different spandrels, different mechanisms to get the sculptural quality of the building. Here you can see the sort of suspended cube in space, and there's this beautiful sort of window or portal that could do many things in terms of what it might be in the future, but it leaves a kind of interesting sort of question and openness. The base is a walk-through passage. You heard Andre talk about all the public events that take place. This is a walk-through public area of art galleries, and it'll be very, very alive at the base. We've been studying carefully the ground floor in terms of the lighting and the quality of the fountains and the recollection of certain modernist traditions. Again, a kind of constructivist feel. And then there you see the tower from the park being done by Melk. The park is being done by Melk, and then the sculptures. And a very interesting thing to remember here is that Mr. Molchanov is an avid collector of contemporary art. So the idea of contemporary art being part of this project is key. And here's a view of what it'll be like going up into the sky. The second project, quickly, is a part of the symphony that we've created. That's the kind of metallic machine object. And then we looked at the site for the museum, and working closely with the Hermitage and with Mr. Piotrovsky and Mr. Ozakov in St. Petersburg, we decided to come up with a new Hermitage museum on this site that would be for modern and contemporary art. So the influences run the gamut from constructivism, but also how constructivism was interpreted in America by Buckminster Fuller, and you'll see the sort of interesting structures within this building in Expo 67. And then we went back again and looked at the notion of the Pround space, Lissitzky. Should I stop? I'll just do 2 slides to show you a little bit of the museum. I'm going to show it later in another presentation. So effectively, it's a glass, 3-dimensional glass container of galleries of art that are stacked in space. This is what it'll look and feel like on the site. It's going to be a very elegant, a very beautiful, a very technologically sophisticated building. And in a way, it's a kind of crystal, let's say a crystal nod or salute to constructivism in response to the other building. And the two of them act as a kind of a dance and a kind of poem from an architectural point of view. Okay, so I'll stop.
Thank you very much.
There's a lot more, but I'll stop.
Thank you. Уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, we must round up. As the producer of this forum, I must be strict on time. I want to apologize because Pavel Levinsky and Daria Borkova wanted to make their contribution, but unfortunately we won't be able to accommodate you. We're not be able to discuss the outcomes. To sum it up, what Yuri Gagarin said, we like and to grumble about how things stand in the situation of real institutions in their actual existing risks. But if we use ZEAL as a project as an example, surprisingly, what we have after these 6 years of activities, we have an international tender for development of the urban vision of this territory, which involved some global teams. And this vision, at the end of the day, notwithstanding all problems, was used as the basis for master planning. We see an investment competition which was won by intellectual developer who treats city landscape, public spaces with the greatest of attention. We have in this project a very interesting managerial approach. Grigoryan offers monitoring and follow-up of the project. And we have several scores of international teams who are responsible for different elements of this project from the architecture perspective. I think that this project, to which we may wish good luck, and we may wish a successful implementation of this project in such a challenging time from the perspective of financial markets, where we have two-digit interest rates on bank loans, etc. And I think that Urban Forum is a place where we can always discuss how the project progresses going forward. Thank you.